Okay, good morning, world. It is Thursday morning, nearly the end of the week. And this morning I wanted to talk about some of the things that are happening with youth. And I know that we kind of touched on that a little bit in one of my first couple of videos. I can't remember which one it was. Maybe it was the very first one, about adversity. Anyway, I just saw a article this morning that's talking about, I think it was in New South Wales, a teenager who might face life in prison because he took another teenager's life. He violently assaulted him with a knife. And, there's been a lot of stories like this lately, hasn't there? And I don't know if there's just more of a focus on it, and, maybe this sort of thing has actually been happening for quite a number of years, but it's just more like in the focal point now. And I know, they are trying to, they've been making reforms on the laws, the legislation around, children even being brought into the legal system by police before the courts, and what sort of legal punishments there can be for them for various different crimes, and depending on the severity of their crime. And I know that, people in society are becoming more and more fearful of, I want to say that like it's teenage kids, isn't it? And, even where I live, my daughter's high school, so my oldest daughter, her high school had to, out of their annual budget, has had to hire security for before and after school hours at the school, because there has been teenagers who don't actually attend that school either. They come from a little bit away, who have been travelling to the area and going to the school, like after school, finding particular kids, and I don't know necessarily how they know each other. I think it's through social media. Like, kids these days, like teenagers these days, they're all on Snapchat, and then, sometimes like they will like, at each other even though they don't know each other in real life. Anyway, so, and then, like if they all do frequent a particular area that's the same, like a town that's in between their two towns, say, because of the shopping precinct and whatever, they might meet each other through that way, or have similar acquaintances and things like that, right? Anyway, so, like some of the things that have happened at my oldest daughter's high school was like, after school, a boy getting, like pretty badly, beaten up by a kid who doesn't go to that school. And it was all over like a girl, one of them, and and then like, as he was like the ex, and then like the guy that doesn't go to the high school, he's like the new boyfriend, and the new boyfriend, thinks he's really super tough. Wanted to, I don't know, come and show everyone who's the new man in town. I don't know, like, it's like so stupid. But anyway, and then there was another incident with, so apparently, like, these kids that are coming, because they come in like a group, even if there is like, one instigator of the physical altercation that happens, it's kind of like a group, right? And then obviously, as parents, we're informed by the school about what action they're taking and things like that, and the police are informed of things, and camera footage and things like that is given to the police to identify these kids and stuff like that. And like I said, security put in place and all that, so that, our kids feel a bit safer after school and things. And, but anyway, so these teenagers who have been coming down have been like identified by students and I think the police as being a part of some gang. And I forget what the gang is called now, but anyway, they are like, as far as the students are aware, and have talked about, they hear things about this gang and people are part of the gang, and they refer to them sort of as like essays, if you know what that is, and because of how they dress and things like that. But apparently this gang is not just made up of kids or of teenagers, it's also got adults involved. And maybe the adults as well are encouraging the kids or teenagers to do particular things. I don't know if it's like to prove themselves, like an initiation thing, or if it's like, because you will have less of a legal, punishment or repercussion on you being charged with doing this or this because you're underage, you're a teenager still. And then these kids, do these things because, maybe they're not happy in their lives. Maybe they've just fallen in the wrong crowd. Maybe it has got to do with, drugs and stuff. And anyway, just a quick sip. Anyway, and I mean, when you're hearing about, kids running around with knives and machetes and just some of the things that they're getting involved in. I mean, it's just really concerning, isn't it? And then, I've heard, there is a bit of, what's the word, like, upset about the possibility of these kids, teenagers, being basically charged like an adult, and held not in a children's court, but the same sort of court that an adult would be charged in, and punished like an adult. And I've heard all the outcry about that being a bad idea, you know, their children, and, you know, the more involved they get in the legal system and courts and things, you know, they're just going to get worse and do worse, and their whole life will just be more and more involved in the legal system. I've heard all of that. I've heard that they, you know, particular, you know, professions that are expert at different fields, you know, they're talking about that we need to do more focus on prevention and, you know, sort of addressing, you know, the core issues of their behaviour, why they're getting involved in crime or drugs or, you know, just bad behaviour. I've heard all of that. I understand where they're coming from. But at the same time, you know, I feel like it's a little bit soft. I feel like it's a bit soft. You know, it's sort of like that gentle parenting, you know, trend thing that's like, oh, you know, when your child has bad behaviour, which can be, you know, ongoing bad behaviour, repeating the same bad behaviour, all these sort of things, whatever the situation, oh, you know, we should get down and we should, you know, lower our voice and give them a hug and, you know, just never tell your child off, never tell them they've done something wrong. You know, anyway, you know what I'm talking about. You know, there is a lot of people, by the way, who say that after raising your child up with, you know, that level of like gentle parenting, that, you know, you have years of fixing to do after that because you're raising self-entitled little brats, really. Anyway, getting back to the teens, and I think that there should be a stronger deterrent for teenagers and kids, you know, to commit these crimes, like more deterrence, like something, they should be fearful of getting caught. They should be fearful of punishment by the courts. They should not think, there should be no impression that, you know, if they get caught, they're going to be, you know, spoken to nicely in a courtroom by a judge because they're dealing with a, you know, underage, like a child still technically, you know, and they're just going to get a little smack on the wrist and, you know, get sent home, and they've got to do, you know, 10 different crimes before they get put into a, you know, some sort of facility. I mean, you know, I've heard, what are they called? You know, like prison officers, but the ones that work at the children's prison or facility, whatever it's called, you know, in Melbourne, I believe, talking about how it's daycare. It's daycare. They have PlayStations. They've got basketball courts. You know, they're hungry. They tell someone who works there and they'll go get some food for them. You know, they're hanging out with other people, you know, other teens, other kids that are like-minded. You know, it is just a holiday. It's a holiday. And, you know, maybe it even is, for some of them, better conditions than what they had at home with their parents or whatever their living situation was. Maybe some of them are involved already in, you know, foster care and things like that, because I do know, you know, some parents, they won't put up with all of that going on. They will kick their kid out. And it's happened even where, like the area that I live in, where parents have kicked their teenagers out because they are refusing to stop the, really what is actually like gang behavior, and drugs and things like that, and not getting help and things, like not accepting help and things. And, at some point I can understand that a parent might reach a breaking point. Like, imagine you had, a teenager who, some teenagers even get violent towards their own parents, especially probably if there's drugs involved and stuff. And can you imagine, like, if you've got a teenager and they're being like violent in the home and maybe damaging your property and just not adhering to any rules and things, and not going to school, getting involved in bad things with other bad people, you'd be at your wit's end. And I understand the mindset of being like, well, I've tried everything I can think of with you and it's not working, so you need to pack a bag, find somewhere else to be, because I can't have this in our home, especially if there's younger siblings and stuff. I can understand that. It would be very difficult to go through that. And I've heard, obviously through my daughter, she's a teenager, she said that there is, even, in the town that's closest to us, there are teenagers there who, some of them used to go to her school, some of them are from different areas and they're just now in town, and they like congregate together and they build like forts around and stuff like that, like under bridges, in the bush, just different places, and they're all just like doing drugs and drinking alcohol and kind of like not caring about, they don't care that they've been kicked out, they don't care that they are basically, living homeless. It's like party time for them, and now no adults can tell us what to do, and the only adults they are dealing with now are these adults that are apparently part of the gang too. Like, it's just, it is a dire situation. There should be more power for police to deal with these kids. There should be more power for the courts to deal with these kids. I think there should also be, repercussions, legal punishments that these kids have to face for their crimes. Because even like property damage and stuff like that, like if kids are, which these kids are that I'm talking about, they go around and they're stealing stuff from people's properties. They are stealing cars. They're damaging property. There has been a stabbing, or like someone got cut with a knife or something like that. They're going to schools and terrorizing the kids. It's just a really, like they can't be getting away with this. Like, really. If adults can't have that sort of behaviour in society, why on earth should we be allowing teenagers who, by the way, it's not like they're built like a 5-year-old, is it? Like they are built, some of them, like an adult themselves. even like, you know, one of my daughters does basketball and there is like a kid, don't worry about it, the alarm thing just goes off even though there's nothing there. Yeah, so yeah, there's like a teenage boy that does coaching at basketball, and he is 14 and he is, I would say, over 6 foot. You know, like, so that's what I mean. Like, you know, some of these teenagers that are running around with knives and some of them machetes and all sorts of, I don't know, all sorts of weapons. You know, it's not like they're built like a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old, you know. And of course, people are fearful, and people shouldn't have to be walking around fearful. You know, and I've heard stories about the area where my grandparents live, you know, and there being teenagers and people running around there with machetes and things. And I just think, oh my God, like, we shouldn't have to be worried about, like, you know, grandma going down to the milk at the shops, you know, that something bad's going to happen to her. You know, like, it just should be a safer place. It just should be. And I've even thought about whether, you know, is it just like bad behavior? Is it just that some people, some teenagers these days just have like violent streaks in them? Or is it because of social media fueling emotions that they can't cope with, you know, that they're just emotionally dysregulated? Is it all just like stemmed from anger about maybe their home life? You know, and then I think about things like, you know, even video games and stuff, which is still like a really big thing. You know, like, are they like just desensitized to violence and crime and things like that? And, you know, then they just like, they act the way that they act and do what they do because it's not scary to them. They're like desensitized to that. It's not, like, if you're used to watching a lot of like violent video games and movies and things like that, you probably wouldn't think it was like so bad to like be aggressive or violent yourself. Maybe, you know, or maybe it just shapes the way your brain functions or something, you know. Like, I'm sure, like, even going back 10 years or something, I forget what the video game was called. I don't think it was Call of Duty. But anyway, there was a video game I remember that kids got really obsessed with, and I remember at the time, and this is like 10 years or more ago, I remember there being like concerns about that kids were becoming really aggressive, really violent, like having violent behavior towards, you know, their family members, their siblings and things like that, and other kids in school because of this game, you know, having such a negative impact on their behavior. Yeah, and you know, even I've seen behavior before in people's kids where like my kids don't have a gaming console, but I've seen like where, like, say it's time to turn off the gaming console because it's, you know, time to go somewhere or, you know, have a meal or whatever. The level of aggression that they have, like, you know, anger, so much anger that they have to turn off the game. And so that's what I mean. It's like, you know, gaming devices, whatever, maybe is also fueling some sort of just really negative mental state in kids and teenagers, which, you know, obviously it's been talked about before. It's obviously proven in ways. But yeah, I mean, there shouldn't be excuses. There shouldn't be soft approach to this. The kids should be fearful of committing crimes, just like an adult is. You know, like an adult should be fearful of committing crimes where, you know, they potentially have jail time and all these sort of things. Of course, you should be fearful of that. Otherwise, everyone's just running around. Excuse me. Feral. Everyone would just be running around feral. You know, the world would be in quite a state, wouldn't it? You know, yeah, people would be hurt all over the place, you know, property would be damaged all over the place. I mean, you really do have to have some rules in place, don't you? You know, and it's not like, you know, there's a lot of people who are guided in life spiritually, you know, through their religion and spiritual beliefs. And so they are probably less likely to commit crimes and have bad behavior and mistreat people and all that sort of stuff as a result of their beliefs. You know, and I really think that's great. And, you know, then there are people who don't have any kind of affiliation towards a religion or spiritual belief, and maybe they care less. You know, maybe they just don't care at all about how they affect anyone else's life, because really that's it too, isn't it? You know, just like they say, there's no such thing as a victimless crime. You know, even if you think, oh, well, I'm just damaging property, I'm not hurting a person. Well, you are still, you know, technically hurting a person, because what if they needed that thing that you damaged? You know, like a car that you stole and crashed or something. Like, what if they can't get their kids to school now? What if it really causes a lot of stress and upheaval in their life, whatever you've done to them? You know, I mean, of course, there are ways that people can be hurt, you know, that isn't physical, you know. And yeah, so I just think, yeah, I kind of feel like, you know, I've heard bad things said about the children's facility in Victoria, that they're considering reopening after it's been closed for years, you know, due to complaints about it meeting the standard and all that sort of stuff. And they've been working to like renovate it or fix it up or something. But I kind of feel like, you know, where these kids should be sent, whatever it is, it like wherever it is, it should be like a boot camp. You know, like, have you ever seen on TV or on the internet, like YouTube, videos of like over in America, they've got these like boot camps for kids that have really bad behavior and have become too much of a problem for their parents, for the schools, for authorities to cope with, to manage. And, you know, they find it very difficult, and so they should. So they should. There should be, it shouldn't be enjoyable when you are being punished for, you know, especially when it's severe stuff, you know. I mean, to take another teenager's life, come on. You know, let alone running around the streets and terrorizing everyone, you know. It's just, It's not on, and as a society, we should be supporting, I think, harsher penalties, and stop cotton balling kids and making excuses for their behaviour. Because you know what, that's just going to lead to more and more adults who are running around in the world terrorizing. You know, I mean, really, that's what it's going to be, isn't it? You know, if you don't fix the problem when they're younger, if you don't nip it in the butt, then it's just going to get worse, of course. You know, the more they associate with other, you know, people who are not doing great in life and not making great choices, of course it's going to get worse. You know, they're not going to hang out with those people under a bridge taking drugs and drinking alcohol and terrorizing and have a light bulb moment and be like, oh, you know what, actually I want to pull my socks up and go back to school and be a good kid. That's just not going to happen. They need to be like shocked, you know, they need to have fear put in them. You know, there has to be appropriate punishment, not cotton balling, not a daycare, you know. Yeah, so anyway, that's my take on that, my thoughts on that. Feel free to jump in the comments and you know, share any of your thoughts on that. You know, if you know anything going on in your area like that, if you've seen anything, you know, if it's affected your children in any way. Yeah, yeah, jump in the comments, have a chat. I think it's something that needs to be really sorted out soon because it's been going on for too long anyway. All right, well, you all have a good Thursday. Have a good day, and I will see you all in the video tomorrow.